Welcome back to USCFootball.com, the Peristyle Inside Troy on YouTube, wherever you are listening from. Thank you for joining us here once again, and I'm joined, as always, for this little special series, the one and only Connor Morrissette. Connor, how you doing?
Doing well, Chris. We talked about the offense. Let's talk about the defense.
Be honest with me, Connor. Were you more excited to talk about offense, or are you more excited to talk about defense for these positional previews?
Well, I think probably the defense, honestly. I really like the defensive line for the most part. I think there's a lot of potential there. This is the cornerback video, though, so he'll have to check back in for some of the defensive lineman stuff. But I think the defensive line has the opportunity to be the strength of the team and control the line of scrimmage in a way that we haven't seen with Lincoln Riley at USC so far, so that's pretty exciting.
I think fans are more excited about that side of the ball, just seeing the progress that was made last year under Danton Lynn. And again, we're getting more into an overall picture here, but we're going to talk about each position group for the defense moving forward. And for people listening on the podcast, I realize that the intro says here with Ryan Abraham. I am not Ryan Abraham. He is nowhere near this operation. So that is a quick correction for people listening on the podcast. It is just me in triple double, no boss man Ryan Abraham. So sorry for that little deke there, but this is our show. And just a quick reminder and a shout out to the official sponsor of the Peristyle Podcast, Trader Joe's, where delightful to get any of your snacks or food needs or any other needs, wine, whatever. Connor, do you like oatmeal?
I do like oatmeal.
Well, I just want to shout out Trader Joe's for their new double apple oatmeal. You know, oatmeal doesn't get a lot of love. It's kind of boring, but it's very dependable. And here they are kicking it up a notch with some apples. So, Connor, maybe you have to check that out.
Healthy, and it fills you up. What more could you ask for?
What more could you ask for? Now, let's officially get into our first positional preview for the defensive side of the ball, and that is going to start with the cornerback position. Connor, when I say cornerbacks, USC 2025, what are those early impressions?
Serviceable room is my early impression on the eve of spring camp here. Spring camp coming up hopefully next week. So, about 7 days until we get into that. I think it's serviceable, and you just look at the history of what USC's done at corner from the transfer portal. They've added some good players. Greedy Vance was a nickel last year who helped them. Jacoby Covington has helped them. But, they haven't really added a game changer at corner, and unless you can do that in the April window, I think you have enough talent here to have a serviceable cornerback room. And like I said off the top, just because the cornerback room isn't elite doesn't mean the defense can't be elite. If you can control the line of scrimmage like USC on the defensive line has a chance to do, then just having a serviceable cornerback room is okay. There are some guys who have the potential to be elite, but my first impression on this room is I think it's solid. An injury here or there, maybe you'll see a younger guy step up. There's an opportunity for some of these younger guys, which USC needs to start trending that way, which I think is good, but I keep going back to the word serviceable.
Yeah, not a super sexy room, just looking at it on paper. You know, you're losing a ton, which we're going to talk about quickly here in a second. But yeah, there is a ton of potential, and there should be opportunity for these guys, for someone to step up with the amount that they're losing in that room. You're right, they don't have a clear-cut star, but maybe that's going to be a cornerback one by committee or something, kind of a heavy rotation. And again, super young in that room, inexperienced. They do have some, experience, but not a lot. And we'll get into that right now because they are losing a lot from this position. And just to note, we are including the nickel position here when we talk about cornerback because they have, or USC lists their nickel as a cornerback. So I'm going to respect their roster and Danton Lynn's designation of that position. So we're also talking about the outside corners and nickel when we're talking about this position. But they are losing Jalen Smith, for future NFL draft pick there. I think anyone would say he was their cornerback one last season. Jacoby Covington, Greedy Vance Jr., their starting nickel, John Humphreys, and Malachi Crawford. I know you're thinking that name did not play last year. Right, he is a redshirt sophomore, would be this year. We'll talk about him a little bit more after these veterans, but he is someone that is leaving the program. But just off the rip, Connor, a lot of veterans leaving this room.
You would have loved if Jalen Smith could come back, but he was out of eligibility. Jacoby Covington, when he was on the field, was good for the most part. He got beat in that Nebraska game early for a touchdown, but I thought he was always pretty solid in his college career. He said at his pro day that a lot of NFL teams have been in touch with him. Greedy Vance, I don't know about his NFL future because he's a little undersized and he didn't test very well with that 40-yard dash at his pro day, but he was a really good college football player and helped USC. So they are losing a lot in this room, but remember last spring, Chris, with Marcellus Williams, he had the huge spring and everyone was so excited about him. He doesn't really do much on defense this past season, but if he can put together another spring like he did last year, I don't know if he's your cornerback one, but he has a chance to help replace some of these guys. And I'm jumping the gun a little bit getting to these returning returning guys, but like just because you're losing a lot doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world when you have some capable young players.
Yeah, you just have to replace because you are losing 3 starters and then John Humphrey, at worst, a rotational guy for them. And then back to Malachi Crawford, a former four-star signee in 2023, did not play his freshman year, had to redshirt due to an upper body injury that was season-ending, did not play at all last season, was healthy for spring, had an up-and-down spring, had a pick in the spring game last spring, but ended up suffering a knee injury in the offseason and was, again, a season ender and had to wait to rehab all this past season. So has never played a snap, and a little reporting from me and Connor here, we expect him to not be on the roster, and the expectation is him to transfer out. So that is a depth cornerback that USC is down as well. And again, not a super big loss because, again, he's been injured the last 2 years, has literally never played a snap, but, that's a 4-star, 6'4" length. That's potential there, but you have to replace that, and we know that they have a large 2026 class committed right now, so they are well aware of that and they are stacking that up. But let's look at what is returning specifically for the cornerback room. You have the 6-year senior DeCarlos Nicholson, who was kind of a reserve, started 3 games last year. Redshirt senior Prophet Brown, 39 career appearances but only 1 career start. You have the redshirt freshman Marcellus Williams. I know Connor's itching to talk about him. Redshirt freshman Braylon Conley and redshirt freshman Isaiah Rubin, who has some versatility, nickel potential as well. So what stands out about this group here, Connor?
Well, DeCarlos Nicholson, we can start with him. Remember, he entered the portal and then quickly backtracked on that. So when he left for that one day, it was like, okay, they're definitely going to need to get someone from the portal now to replace some of the depth. But then that was all worked out. And he got the extra year because of the junior college ruling. So I like him. I like his size. I like his speed. He was beaten a couple times last year. I remember in the bowl game, there was a big play that went his way, but I felt like his coverage was pretty good. I actually think, Chris, that even though he's older, he has a chance to emerge into a pretty solid cornerback because he's going to be in his second year with D'Anton Lynn. I really do value that older player who's just been in college for such a long time that has to give them some sort of a leg up when you're 22, 23, however old he is, going up against younger players. Of course, the freak younger players, you can't really compete with them, but like just a serviceable 23-year-old, I think, is better than a serviceable teenager. So I like having him back. We'll see if he cracks a starting rotation. At nickel, Prophet Brown, is he going to be the guy? I think right now he is the starting nickelback, and we'll see if USC feels they need to go get someone like they did last April in Greedy Vance. But I don't really know who else is even competing with Prophet Brown, who would have a real chance to push him to start. And then Marcellus Williams, there's a transfer who's going to come in who will have a say in this cornerback room. But Marcellus Williams, based on what he did last spring, based on him as a recruit, has a real chance to emerge as a starting corner for USC too. So I start with those guys, but there are certainly some other guys in the room we can touch on too.
Yeah, just very quickly on DeCarlos. Yeah, I think that was a big, obviously the JUCO lawsuit, whatever,
Court ruling,
yes, thank you, was huge. Just getting him back, another veteran to pair with one of the guys you're bringing in with the new faces. But 6'3", 195 pounds, a lot of length. They lose a lot of length with Jacoby Covington, John Humphrey, so you're getting some back there with DeCarlos. And remember, DeCarlos is relatively new to the position. He was a quarterback that flipped to cornerback when he was at the JUCO level, only started 7 games prior to coming to USC. So he doesn't have like a super ton of experience, and I'm in agreement with you 100%. Just getting a older guy who's been in college for multiple years, knows the system. He'll have another year to grow with Doug Bell, D'Anton Lynn, new cornerbacks coach, Trevon Reed. There's a lot of good coaching in the building. So if you have a guy here who's kind of raw, came to USC raw, got a little bit better, isn't a world beater, but he has an opportunity to really develop in his second year with this scheme and with these coaches. And hey, maybe he's a surprise and he does blossom into a guy who is a starter for more than 3 starts that he had in 2024. Has some NFL qualities with that length and that size. So hey, you have a good starting base with him and having him played in your defense last year. So I think that's a big return there. Prophet Brown, I'm a big Prophet Brown believer. I don't know where you fall on that scale. I'm a big Prophet Brown guy. Former 4-star guy. He played running back in high school as well as defensive back. Had to take some time to learn how to play defensive back because when you're in high school and you're a star running back, you're playing most of your snaps on offense. You're not really practicing with the defense. You're not really learning. You're just a good athlete. Go out there, make some plays, make some picks. So Prophet Brown is a guy I think who can really challenge for that nickel spot. 39 career games, again, 1 career start. He's been kind of like the forgotten man for most. When you need someone to step up in a game, fill in for an injured guy, Prophet Brown is usually that guy. Has made, a lot of reps, usually in those bowl games when other people are opting out or not there available. Prophet Brown is usually that guy you turn to. So he's one of my dark horses to watch out for in this cornerback room as a guy who could start at the nickel spot, maybe outside, but I'm kind of penciling him in as that true nickel contender. And we'll see what they do in the transfer portal after this and who they kind of bring in to help round out this room. And then Marcellus Williams is probably the number 1 kind of breakout pick guy a lot of people has. If you're making a power ranking, he's up there in the top 3. Just a guy who I don't really understand why he didn't play more games last year. Just 1 game. They only gave him 1 snap, or not 1 snap, but 1 game all season. You couldn't fit him in somewhere just to get him a little bit more time, a little more reps, a little more development after a really, really good spring camp, and then just kind of fell down the roster and I never used him again. So I think that was a mistake, but Marcellus is one of those guys you have to keep your eye on for spring camp because he is a contender to take one of those starting cornerback jobs.
We didn't see too many freshman contributions on defense outside of Cameron Fountain and Desmond Stevens. And if anyone else comes to mind who I'm missing, Chris, please correct me. Jade, that was more out of need.
Yeah.
With Jade
desperation,
and Cameron. Desmond Stevens, I felt like he really earned his way on. But that was after Eric Gentry got hurt, of course. The way Danton Lynn operates, he has that NFL style where if I can't trust you to do what I need you to do, you're not going to play. He doesn't go out of his way unless it's an injury to say, hey, we're going to play this guy for the future. We need to develop this guy. It's more of, I need to win this game right now. I need you to go in and do exactly what I know you're capable of doing. And that's not to say that Marcellus Williams wouldn't have been able to do what Danton Lynn wanted him to do, but John Humphrey, coming from Danton Lynn's defense, gave him a bigger leg up as that reserve corner over Marcellus Williams. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Braylon Connolly, Chris, he seems to be the forgotten man in this mix because we didn't hear a lot about him in the spring, but when you would talk to the defensive players at practice or just whenever you had a chance to speak with them, his name would come up a lot as someone who really impressed those guys. And with the room the way it is right now, Braylon Connolly could force his way onto the field with a really good camp. I don't think that's out of the question. He's facing an uphill battle, but I think he has a chance to play more than the true freshman and probably more than Isaiah Rubin does.
Yeah, 6 foot, 180 pounds, a big cornerback, 3-star out of Humble, Texas. And there was a point of the season when the injuries were kind of piling up there. He was really close to getting in the field as a sort of desperation play. There was possibility he got on the field. I forget which game it was, but they were preparing him to possibly play if there was a need on the field with another injury at the cornerback position. So, yeah, him and Marcellus, kind of those 2 guys, redshirt freshmen, you really want to keep an eye on and watch for spring camp because they're going to have plenty of opportunity. I know there's a lot of freshmen coming in, but those guys should be given a lion's share of reps to kind of battle it out and see who can push for maybe a starting job or maybe, at very least a backup job. And Isaiah Rubin is a guy who has some versatility. As I mentioned, he was working with the nickels throughout the middle of the year, so he has potential, kind of like Prophet Brown, as a nickel, as an outside cornerback. I kind of see him as a nickel, and I think he's going to be in that kind of backup fight with, Prophet Brown, who, again, I just said I think could be the starting nickel. We'll see what happens and who they move around and stuff. But Isaiah Rubin, I feel like he's kind of inching towards, being a not career nickel, but that's where he's going to play for a lot of his career.
If it's not Prophet Brown at nickel, I just don't know who it would be. If you were to ask Prophet where he prefers to play, I feel like he would say just the regular cornerback spot. So don't rule out him competing for snaps there. But the reason we both are so gung-ho about putting him at nickel is because you just look at the room. I don't know who else would play that spot. And I don't really love that group. Like, it's not that I don't love Prophet. I just don't love that who's going to push him outside of an Isaiah Rubin who didn't play at all on the defensive end last season. I don't know if there's a lot of competition at that spot that you would necessarily be hoping for. And if Prophet Brown does win the job, it's looking like he will, and maybe they don't add someone from the portal, he gets hurt, then you're looking at someone who really has no experience. So I don't exactly know what the right portal move is because I don't think there's like an obvious need. It's hard to add depth at the portal. Like, I feel like you want to add someone who's just ready to go in this April window. We saw that with the offensive tackle spot. Unless it was like a surefire NFL guy, you didn't want to bring in someone who felt like they had to compete for a job. They wanted to be guaranteed a job. Does that negatively impact Prophet Brown if you bring in someone who is just trying to compete for a job, or like, will they not want to come because Prophet's there? So it's sort of a delicate dance that they'll have to do. But to me, that nickel job looks like Prophet's, and again, I don't know who's pushing him.
Remember, they swiped Greedy Vance in that second window. He was like, we didn't think that they needed another cornerback, but they went out and grabbed Greedy Vance, and they moved Jalen Smith to outside corner, and then the rest is history in terms of him being a really good defender at the position for the Trojans in 2024. You don't think there's a possibility of Marcellus playing nickel? There has been flirtation with that. There was some reps there last year in camp.
Potentially. I think what would be more likely is they would flip Prophet to regular corner if they did bring in a Greedy Vance type, and then the Greedy Vance type would just be the nickel, and Marcellus would stay at boundary corner. The nice thing about DeCarlos Nicholson is he's great to have in the room. He's a great teammate. Everyone loves his son so much. He's a good guy, but I don't think there's pressure to play him where if it's close, what I said about Lynn before, he's going to play the guy that gives him the best chance to win. But if like Marcellus Williams is nipping at DeCarlos Nicholson's heels and it really is close, you probably would lean towards him playing. And I just think he's more of a natural cornerback. But if the staff thinks that he's better at nickel, maybe he's the missing piece that I'm missing here, and he pushes Prophet Brown and could potentially win that job. But I would like to see Marcellus Williams fight to get one of those regular cornerback spots because I don't think that competition is very deep without him.
Also, it's spring, so a lot of fun. You could just mix and match, see who works where, cross-train, get all that out the way. And it is funny because when you think about Marcellus and DeCarlos for one of those spots, because one is 6'3", the other is not even 6 foot. So very different types of cornerbacks. And at least you have some versatility there where, hey, I need a bigger cornerback. I got DeCarlos Nicholson waiting on the wing there at 6'3". Let's move on to the next topic, which is the new faces. As I mentioned, there will be several new faces in this cornerback room for 2025. We'll start with the big transfer that they got. I believe the first transfer they got for the portal cycle in December, redshirt senior cornerback DJ Harvey out of San Jose State by way of Virginia Tech, a SoCal native. I'm sure Connor covered him at some point because Connor has covered everybody out of the SoCal region. 17 career starts, a 90.3 defensive mark by Pro Football Focus last season. That's very good. You also have 3 freshmen. You have a lot of defensive backs coming in this year, but you have 3 that are joining the room here. True freshman Alex Graham, a 4-star number 27 cornerback. True freshman James Johnson, a 3-star as well, a 3-star number 88 athlete. And then true freshman Treston Castro, a local product who is a 4-star, the number 25 cornerback in the class. I do want to say James Johnson, kind of a weird one. He's listed as an athlete, could have played wide receiver, could also be a safety, but I am just rounding him here as a quarterback because that is where we have him listed right now. So he could possibly play safety. I just want to throw that out there. But I think I'm just going to have him listed here as a cornerback for the time being, and we'll see what happens in the spring. Connor, I think we have to start with the big transfer pickup in DJ Harvey, who, as we see it, probably a starter in this defense. No questions asked.
Yeah, I think he's cornerback 1. And as we're hashing this all out, I'm wondering maybe the staff loves DJ, or I know they love DJ Harvey as a cornerback, and I think you can put him in as a starter. Maybe to round out, like, having someone cover those taller guys, maybe DeCarlos Nicholson has that other spot in the coach's mind locked down going into camp. And I'm wondering, are Marcellus Williams and DJ Harvey maybe repetitive, and maybe that would lead to Marcellus Williams playing some nickel. So I know earlier I just said I wasn't sure about that, but hey, that's
turning on himself.
That's the beauty of doing these shows and trying to figure it out. I mean, we're just going in totally blind right now. We haven't heard from anyone at USC in a couple months, so we'll learn a lot more, of course. But does it make sense if DJ Harvey is one corner to have a smaller guy too, like Marcellus Williams, but you'd probably want a bigger guy out there. So, but the overarching point is I think DJ Harvey is the first guy on the team sheet, if you will, if we were playing soccer. Like he's number one who you put down on the cornerback spot. He's a very good cover guy, very athletic. He came to USC to play a lot, to elevate himself coming from San Jose State, to show NFL scouts, hey, I might be a little bit small, but I'm a NFL cornerback. And he certainly has the potential to do that. So I look at him as a starting corner for sure, and then you would have Marcellus and DeCarlos battling it out for that second spot. Maybe Profit's in there too. Maybe Braylon Conley's in there too. But if the staff wants a bigger cornerback, that would make sense for DeCarlos Nicholson to be that other guy, and then that would open up Marcellus Williams to play nickel. So I hope if you had to take a lunch break or something, you didn't pause the show right before my last point, and then now you're like, hey, didn't this guy just say something else? We're all working through stuff here on the fly, but I do think that would make sense. And if they do go small, maybe it is Harvey and Marcellus Williams, because I will say, I like Marcellus is a really good cornerback, and I want to see him get a chance there too.
Yeah, and you made a good point about how Harvey and Marcellus are kind of similar. They're both physical, good coverage guys, really aggressive. That's kind of the same mold. You're hoping that Marcellus turns into a guy like DJ Harvey. You got two of those guys on the field. What about, would you be shocked if they were like, we came out there like, oh, DJ Harvey's our starting nickel? Would you be shocked?
I would, because he just hasn't played there. He didn't play there at San Jose State last season. He was an outside guy, so that would surprise me.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm not counting out anything with Danton Lynn's like, hey, I think he's good here. We're going to train him here all spring. A lot of versatility. As we can see, there's guys that can bounce around, move around, except for Carlos Nicholson. He's staying on the outside at 6'3". But Profit has versatility. Marcellus has versatility. DJ Harvey might have some versatility. We got to see in spring, but there are a lot of different combinations you could play with these guys. You're just hoping someone steps up, whether it's a Braylon Connolly, Marcellus Williams, who we think will, or maybe one of these freshmen, Connor, because as I mentioned, Alex Graham, James Johnson, Tristan Castro. If I'm looking at these three names here, I'm kind of looking at the local guy, Tristan Castro, 6'2", 175 pounds, out of the Inland Empire, 4-star, number 25 cornerback. He is maybe a guy that could jump into the mix as a bigger cornerback. As we mentioned, there were some smaller cornerbacks, Prophet Brown, DJ Harvey, Marcellus Williams, all under 6 feet, Isaiah Rubin under 6 feet. Maybe they want some more length, and Tristan Castro brings that at a 6'2", 175 pounds.
I wonder if he's ready to contribute in year one. Talking to a few scouts, some people think he might need a year to get ready, which can't harm him for that. A lot of guys do. But he does fit that mold, and he certainly has a very high ceiling, and I'm really excited about him. So I don't know, Chris, if he's totally in that mix to push for a starting job in his first camp. We all thought Marcellus Williams would be in that mix, and he had a great camp, about as good of a camp as you can possibly have, and then he still didn't really get into that mix as a true freshman. So that sort of shows me that it's going to be an uphill climb for a true freshman cornerback under Danton Lynn, but the room does look different. There aren't as many experienced guys, so I don't rule it out, but I don't think it's a lock by any means for him to be in the competition. I imagine Braylon Connolly would be pretty firmly in front of him on the depth chart, but hey, that's what spring ball is for. If you can go out there and show that you deserve to be higher up on a depth chart, then you're going to deserve it. Just to finish up the DJ Harvey and the nickel Marcellus Williams conversation. So last year, DJ Harvey played 683 defensive snaps at wide corner and then 43 in the slot. So he did it a little bit. I said he totally didn't do it. He did it a little bit, but he is a outside corner through and through.
Oh, I just want to pump the brakes there. I didn't say Tristan Castro was going to start. I was just saying a guy who could maybe make some waves, but hey, he's having a really good spring camp like Marcellus did. But again, we know that that ended up being just one game appearance for Marcellus. I'm just saying, he got 6'2" length, not a super tall cornerback room. Maybe he makes some plays. Maybe you're kind of like, okay, maybe he can get into that second rotation kind of guy, kind of press there some of those returning guys like Braylon Conley or an Isaiah Rubin. We'll see. That's what I was saying. I'm not saying start. True freshman start at cornerback, that's way too much.
Yeah.
None of these guys are like Dijon Lee kind of guy, 5-star guy.
Xavier Brown.
Yeah, none of those guys are high-end kind of guys, which not a problem, but they didn't bring any of those guys where you can be like, okay, this is a guy, this is a Jack Jones, this is Iman Marshall, guy who's top 5 at their position groups, kind of can be an immediate impact starter. I do like Alex Graham, though. I will say, watch out for Alex Graham out of Cass Technical in Detroit, Michigan, played for a really good program, 6'1". He might have been a safety. He could also end up a safety. He might be a kind of nickel contender as well. So a lot of these guys have versatility, which is something we know Danton Lynn really likes with his defensive backs. He's not afraid to move those guys around. So Alex Graham, one of their other 4-star signings, a top 247 guy at number 236 overall. Keep an eye out for him, coming from a good program. I believe they won a state title last season, so knows how to win, joining this team early. So again, all those guys should get a lot of reps in the spring because there's a lot of reps up for grab, Connor.
Alex Graham is probably my favorite true freshman defensive back. I love the versatility. I know our guy Alan True is very high on him, our scout at 24/7. Graham, to me, Chris, has a very high ceiling, and he's a guy who really did a lot in high school from a production standpoint, and I really value that. They put him at receiver sometimes. Like, he is a really good athlete, and he can come in, and if he has a solid camp, maybe they do like him at nickel. I know James Johnson will probably be in that nickel spot because he's a little bit of a smaller player, so that leaves you with a good amount of numbers there. But to me, it looks like there's an opening for the backup nickel job, and maybe that could go to a true freshman right now. I don't think anyone will push to start, but like if Alex Graham, they see him as a nickel, we'll see. James Johnson, I'm pretty confident they see him as a nickel. That's what he told me. Then you have Prophet Brown, maybe Marcellus Williams. Like, that's 4 names. I don't think all 4 of those guys will be in the nickel competition, so maybe you whittle that down to 3. Someone's going to have to be a backup, and one of these guys will get the chance.
I was going to say thank you for pointing that out because I was thinking James Johnson has the build, the mold, the athleticism to play nickel for this scheme.
Yeah.
Being a guy who could have played wide receiver for colleges at the next level. So, yeah, very athletic, very dynamic, and, yeah, I would expect him to join that kind of weird nickel room where we don't really know who's going to line up there.
And Isaiah Rubin, too. I left his name out, so that's potentially 5 names. I don't think there will be that many in the competition, but the point is someone's going to earn the starting job. I don't think it's going to be any of the true freshmen and probably not Isaiah Rubin, but then there has to be a backup, and it could be a very inexperienced backup. And if you earn that backup job as a true freshman, that's significant.
Connor, let's move on to our next topic, which is the strength and weaknesses of the cornerback room. So what is your early strength for this group going into spring?
My strength is outside of DJ Harvey, everyone who figures to be playing a good amount this season. They were here last year, so they're going to be in their second year with Danton Lynn, which to me is invaluable. Knowing what Lynn has accomplished as a defensive coordinator, how he improved UCLA, how he improved USC. He's never been in a situation where he has guys returning to his program as the defensive coordinator. So while there might not be that elite talent in this cornerback room, the fact that so many guys were here last year who figure to play a lot, that is significant to me, and that could lead to a big jump from some of these guys, which is awesome.
I like that. I like that a lot. I have hungry. Just these guys coming back have not had a lot of opportunity over the years or didn't have a lot of opportunity last year, and there are plenty of reps for grabs, and this is going to be a battleground position for USC in the spring. Carlos Nicholson, he wants to prove he can be a starter. Prophet Brown really wants to prove that he could be a starter in his final season. Marcellus Williams, redshirt freshman, super hungry, only got 1 game last year. Braylon Conley, we think there's a good potential there. Didn't play a lot last year. He has potential as well. So I like the hungriness of this room, and there should be a lot of competition this spring, starting in spring, this whole offseason, going to fall camp as well. And we'll see what they do with the portal moving forward. But they got a lot of hungry guys on this roster right now. What is your weakness for this unit?
There's no elite, really highly ranked 5-star recruit, which 5 stars don't grow on trees. They're very tough to get, but it would have been great if you had like a Dijon Lee or a Xavier Brown in this mix. And, you know, USC didn't end up landing those guys, so don't want to talk about it too much, but that's just what they're missing. So hopefully as time goes on, they can change that.
Yeah, I'm in the same vein as you. No true like star power. They didn't bring in that 5-star guy, and they really haven't done that the last several cycles. It's been having to mine the portal for that top guy outside of like Jalen Smith, who kind of emerged and was developed there. They haven't really gotten a high-end cornerback in quite some time. Damani Jackson, but we know that did not kind of pan out.
Yeah, he was probably the last one, right?
Probably the last one. Now he's at, Alabama doing some good things over there. So they haven't really held on to one and kind of made him the guy for USC. That's going to be the next big thing for this position group moving forward, is find that guy in recruiting, develop that guy in recruiting, and just land some elite cornerbacks moving forward. What are the final thoughts here for this cornerback room, Connor, which is kind of our early starter projections?
Well, here's what I hope happens.
Okay.
I hope that DJ Harvey, Marcellus Williams, and Carlos Nicholson are the 3 outside corners, and you play 2 most of the time, as we know, but depending on the matchups, you can mix and match those guys how you like. So say USC was playing against a Maryland from last season where they had Ty Felton and that other good receiver, 2 guys who aren't huge, but they're speedy. Maybe in that situation, you'd see more of DJ Harvey and Marcellus Williams. Say you're playing Ohio State, it's a tough cover, but you got to go up against a bigger guy like a Jeremiah Smith. That would make more sense for DeCarlos Nicholson. So I want to see those guys be that cornerback trio. And
3-headed monster.
Yeah, I think there's versatility there. I don't think they have to be an elite group to have a really elite defense because of what USC has on the defensive line, and I think being serviceable, that is more than enough. So I hope that those 3 guys are there at the corner spot. And then at nickel, I look at Prophet Brown, but would it surprise me if Prophet Brown was part of that trio that we talked about? Marcellus Williams ended up being more of a nickel. No. Where I'd like to see them add in the transfer portal, I think, although it's going to be challenging like I laid out earlier, if they can get a Greedy Vance type, that might be what's in the best interest of this team if Prophet Brown doesn't have the strongest spring as the coaches are hoping for. But we need to see where Prophet Brown is going to be. He's kind of the key to this whole thing. If they like him as a true corner, then okay, you definitely need a nickelback to compete with Marcellus Williams and those young guys. If they like Prophet at nickelback and he has a really strong camp, they might not end up adding anyone, and you just hope he can stay healthy the whole season. And if he doesn't, then you would have to throw in a younger guy. They're walking it's a little bit of a tightrope walk here with the transfer portal, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think, as you said, if Prophet doesn't have a strong camp, you can easily move him to outside cornerback, and you have a really solid 4 right there with Prophet, DeCarlos, Marcellus, and DJ Harvey.
And Danton Lynn plays a lot of guys if he feels like they're ready. Last year, we asked him in spring, like, how many corners do you want to play? And I forget the exact number, but did he say like 8 defensive backs or some high number that we were all kind of caught off guard by? So, yeah, say Prophet Brown does get moved to corner and he's that 4th guy. Potentially USC would play 4. They did last year, and there were injuries and stuff happened. So that could be part of this equation too.
Yeah, but I definitely do think they're going to try to add someone for this room moving forward, whether that's an outside guy, whether that's a impact nickel guy, depending on what happens this spring. I think they are going to at least add 1 cornerback to this room just to bolster it in some way, because, again, there is not a ton of experience out there, not a lot of starts outside of, DJ Harvey. So I think they want to add more to that. So I'm going to go with, though, if we're talking just about spring, DJ Harvey. I'm going to go Marcellus Williams with DeCarlos Nicholson as the swing corner, if you will, the first guy off the bench. And then as a Prophet Brown backer, I have to go Prophet Brown as the starting nickel here in spring. And again, this is kind of just looking only at kind of spring, but these are what we think will happen down the line, but we don't know what the future holds in terms of additions and stuff like that. So those are our final thoughts. And then we have one question, which we like to do at the end of these little positional previews. We solicited these questions on Twitter and on the Peristyle for the defensive side of the ball. We have one from Anthony in LA. Can Marcellus be cornerback 1? And I'm assuming this is talking about this year. Can he be cornerback 1 this year? Because I do think he could be cornerback 1 in the future. I don't think it's 2025, though.
I don't either, but I don't rule it out.
Yeah.
If he has an awesome spring again and locks that down, and the ceiling that we all know he has, he gets close to that as a sophomore in college or a redshirt freshman, that would be amazing. And he was a highly ranked kid. He wasn't a 5-star, but he was a very highly ranked 4-star.
All-American.
So, All-American. He has the chance to be special. So I think DJ Harvey is that cornerback one going into this season. But if Marcellus Williams emerged, then we talk about USC recruiting 2026 locally. Like, hey, here's a local kid who we developed and is having an awesome second season with us. That would help recruiting. That would do a lot to help your program outside of just on the field. If he turns into your first cornerback, that would be huge. So I don't think I would bet on it. I don't rule it out. He certainly has that potential. And like you said, Chris, it might not be this year, but it hopefully would be the year after.
Yeah, I would think this is the year you're kind of training him to take it over for when DJ Harvey is off to the NFL next season. So I think it's DJ Harvey's show as the QB1 for this defense, but Marcellus Williams will be emerging as such for next year and beyond. I think that is the plan. Again, like Connor said, I'm not ruling it out because I think Marcellus is really, really good. He has that type of talent and that pedigree to be a QB1 for a top team. So I'm not, did I say QB? CB1. Excuse me, not QB1. I'm still mixed up from our Jada Maeva opening. So cornerback one for 2025. I'm saying no right now. For the future, yes. But again, we would not count that out from Marcellus moving forward. All right, Connor, we are done here with the cornerbacks. We are moving on to our next position group. Thank you. Defense just getting started, and we will catch you on our next one.